From out of the lab and into the gym, it's the Coach Me Plus Applied Sports Science Podcast.
Hey everybody, it's Kevin Davidovich, co-founder and president of Coach Me Plus. You're listening to the Coach Me Plus Applied Sports Science Podcast. Today is Wednesday, July 6th, 2016, and you're listening to episode number 5. Today we have on Jay DeMayo. He is the head strength coach for basketball over at the University of Richmond. He also runs the Central Virginia Sports Performance Seminar. You can find that at cvasps.com. Now, if you've never been to this, I promise you it's probably one of the best seminars that you'll ever go to. It is this year, July 15th and 16th, which is next week. And of course, if you miss it, book it for next year. As far as our conversation with Jay, we discuss the seminar. We talk a little bit about getting athlete compliance. We get some information on Omega Wave and how to educate your athletes on nutrition. For us, if you want to subscribe to our podcast, make sure that you click your link, whatever app you're using, whether it be iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever it might be. You can follow us on Twitter at CoachMePlus. And of course, you can subscribe to our newsletter when you go to CoachMePlus.com and click on the link on the top right. So, without further ado, Jay DeMayo. And we are live.
Wow!
That was a ridiculous. That was like a disaster. That was a lesson in why nobody should ever podcast without professional equipment.
We talk about, bro. I'm not number 40s this week, I think, for me. And although I guess the issues I'm having with this MacBook say otherwise, but Sarah, right?
Well, who do we have? We have Jay DeMayo on the line here. Jay DeMayo, the head strength coach basketball at University of Richmond, and of course, Jay DeMayo, who also runs the Central Virginia Sports Performance Seminar, which is also known as the CVAPS. And which is coming up in a week, right?
Yeah, about 10 days.
Yeah, cool.
15th
awesome.
and 16th.
Really cool. Actually, last year was my first year that was there. I thought it was really good. You had I don't know how you got the speakers that you got there, but literally it was like one of those things where you had to bribe people or something to actually have the people that you had there.
I guess that one thing that I've kind of become a little bit better than average at is kind of finding people, and I don't know, I think that a lot of people would want to become involved now because we've been really lucky to have some really just fascinating people involved from, it all started with Joseph Johnson and his connections with Ultimate Athlete Concepts, bringing in Dr. Yesis, Dr. Bondarchuk, Dr. Natalia Verkhoshansky, the connection with Dr. Mianfeng Ruan out in Ningbo, China, and Dr. Surin. And then, social media is really crazy, man. You can get in touch with people, no problem, just hunting people down on Facebook or Twitter or whatever it may be. It's, so yeah, I think that it's kind of just sort of been a evolving kind of creature in and of itself.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah, and how many years is it now? 6 years?
This will be number 6, yeah.
That's
6
crazy.
or 7. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yeah, this is number 6.
So, in the past 6 years, I guess the question would be how has it progressed from that first event that you had, and which I'm sure was a learning experience to start with.
Yeah, man, they all are. If I know a lot of people think that you can do a lot with these things, and it's really this crazy, easy, whatever. I'll tell you straight up, it's not. My assistant Andrew and I have been running crazy already, and we're 10 days out.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it actually, and I've told this story a billion times now, but a former director, Brandon Horgan, who's now the head guy at Wake Forest, kind of called me out to pick it up, and we went really big for 2010. But the reason I don't mention 2010 is because we had to quit. We had to fold it because nobody ended up showing up. So we took a couple steps back, and I want to say 2011 was Doc, was Anatoly. It might have been Vladimir too. I'd have to look at the list again. It's been so long. Ethan Reeve was here. Joel Jameson was here, and that really started. From the connection with Yosef. Then a really big connection that drove a lot of what we have done here was that with the late Bob Eilenfeld, who was known as the angry coach on Elite FTS. And if you know Bob, if anybody did, that was the perfect moniker for him. But he's sorely missed and was a big part in everything. He was the connection to guys like Joel and Landon, and and Landon has really driven us in a lot of very positive directions. And Landon and Cal Dietz, bringing in Benny, and bringing in people like him, directing us towards Hank Krasenhoff and Steve Magnus, and all sorts of people. Andrew Althoff, really came from the direction of Landon Evans. So it's been those guys really pushing the way, and then a lot of people behind the scenes like Matt Tomey at Michigan Tech, Jeff Moyer with DC Sports Training in Pittsburgh, Danny Raimondi at George Washington has been completely like a backbone, like something you'd never see in the front, but he keeps me standing up with a lot of these things.
Sure.
And it's I'm sure I'm missing somebody, and if I am, I'm sorry. Doc Ure, Slider, who'll be down. All these guys that they basically volunteer their time to come back and help because it really is a special 2 days, man. It's a lot of fun.
Well, so we go. I think we did 22 or 23 shows this year, like just traveling around, and the one thing that you always get over and over again is you'll get these seminars, you get these groups, and they'll have a speaker, and then the speaker gets up on stage, and the guy starts talking about whatever theory he's getting into and stuff like that, and because the crowds at some of these events are getting so big, they kind of, I don't know, jump the shark kind of thing, right? Like where you've gotten to the point where people won't divulge the actual techniques or the secrets or whatever it is behind what they're doing because there's, competitors are in the audience, or, they might be afraid that they're going to offend somebody or whatever it might be. You go to MIT Sloan or something like that, and people are they're really tight-lipped about what they say on stage. But my experience in going to CVAPs last year was people started cracking open Excel sheets and laptops and data sets and just started getting into like, look, man, this is how I do it. This is why we do it. This is where it worked. This is where it screwed up. And I was really impressed with the open nature that the forum kind of provided. And I don't know if it's because of the size of the room or, because it was like on campus in a dorm or what, but whatever you did to get that environment going, I really, learned a lot being there. And of course, the networking was great and everything else like that. So, that's just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of what we want it to be. Is it's, there's so many people that, get up and talk about like this is Team X's speed program or whatever, but never tell you like their actual numbers. And I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that could take things from just exercises or sets and reps or whatever it may be. But when we're looking at, the group of people that are there regularly, it really is I think Rudy said it in his interview at the end of it, where it's really kind of just like a bunch of like family members or really tight buddies just get together, and it's just like, yo, man, so what you been doing different, and what are you seeing? And and it really is. It's not like, because I think the thing with most people in this profession, what they would probably agree with is if you've got a lot of secrets, you're probably hiding something. There's
not only hiding. I wouldn't say hiding something. I'd say that you're afraid that most secrets are pretty simple, right? Like you get behind the doors of whatever super secret sauce is happening, and it's actually ends up being like really basic stuff, and there isn't a whole lot to it. I think people are afraid of stripping their own mystique.
Oh yeah, but even when we get down to things like talking with, for example, like Ryan Horn of Wake Forest, like how you guys are using your Omega Wave versus like what we do. Like something simple like that. Again, like there's some people who just they don't like to talk about those things or what modifications you're actually making. Like, what are you doing? What are you looking at?
Mm-hmm.
And then how do you know that it's helping? Is it even helping? What are you seeing? And it's a lot of open and honest sharing, and it's because it's not. And the other thing too, like there's a lot of guys there who are very serious about what we're doing.
Sure.
Who are very serious about the advancement of the profession and all of those things. But there's not a lot of assholes, that are going to be like, nah, dude, that's stupid. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
If you can provide a reason, whether someone agrees with it or not, we had it was like 3 or 4 years ago when the whole 1x20 thing started going, when we were using it here, when it was me and Matt. Jeff Moyer was starting to use it up in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And Yosef.
Explain that. What's the 1x20 thing?
So it's Doc Yesis's methods. So it's basically just one set of 20 of a ton of exercises, basically, looking at every joint angle. And it's just general GPP. And I think people get a little excited about all of it because they hear this thing and there's now almost like this mystique to it, where it's almost, like, is it the dark side of the force? Is it, are you going to, what is it? But it's just simple GPP. It's awful. I ding my knee up playing broomball with friends.
They have ice down there, Richmond?
Yeah, inside. Imagine that. We're really good at central air. But it's, I squatted for the first time in 2.5 months, and then that's what I did. I did the 1x20 today, and it's not fun. When people look at it, and could it be boring? Could it be this? Could it be that? Well, there's a ton of things you can change all the time, and let's be honest, boring works, bro.
No, that's what I'm saying. Sometimes simple is like the easiest thing, but so like all this is going around. You got a bunch of different guys, basically implementing the methodology and.
Oh, and it was just like, this was before we were housing on campus, so we were at a bar, and it was like 20 people just like going absolutely crazy, like ripping it apart and defending it and building it and how they would manipulate it and all these things. And it was probably one of the coolest professional discussions I've ever been in, because it was just like, really, it was like the three of us are just like, no, like that's legitimately how we do it.
Yeah.
Oh well, but blah 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 blah. Maybe, but that's just not how we do it. And these are the results that we got.
Yeah.
And it was just like you were saying. It was awesome though, man. It was.
It becomes an honest discussion, right?
Yeah, and especially when you start mixing in good beer, and all of a sudden that discussion starts to pick up a little bit.
I'd say some of the best conversations that I've been a part of have been like in a bar with 5 or 6 different coaches. Everybody just cracks it open and like totally honest and this is why this sucks and this is why this is cool, and it's very rare you get that in a seminar kind of setting, because everybody's trying to put their best professional foot forward, and I'm so and this is my persona and this is who I am, and when that stuff breaks down and actually people have real conversations, that's when the ideas really start flowing.
And even more so, what you find with a lot of these things is like, when people have these conversations, it's typically we agree on like legitimately 98% of everything.
Yeah.
And then it's like the 2% where it's like, I see what you're doing. Well, I see what you're doing, but I don't like it. Whatever. But it's like, there was a great conversation between Dr. Peterson and Val 3 or 4 years ago when Benny gave his dissertation. And Val initially was like, what? No, this is all wrong. And then Ben was like, well, wait a minute. And they talked about it, and then it kind of came around where it's like, again, they agreed on 97, 98% of it.
Yeah.
But it was just terminology or this, that, or the other thing. But I think those socials are the best time for me. I mean, I just sit at a table, and it's just like, all right, just crack the ears open and just start absorbing, because there's...
honestly, like if you're like a young coach in the profession, that's probably the best lesson that you can throw out there, is to listen with your mouth shut for a while and actually hear what some of these guys are doing, because I see a lot of stuff, right? Like we just work with so many different groups and different coaches and things like that. And a lot of the opinions that I have are, I don't know, they're anecdotal, right? Like I can tell you, what this football team does and what that hockey team does and what this coach does behind the scenes and things like that. And honestly, like I'm just not the expert enough to tell you why it's right or wrong. And if I just shut up and listen, the amount of information that comes this way really helps me understand, why a coach is doing something that way or why they think this guy's methodology sucks. And I'm not in a position to defend it. I'm just simply a neutral person listening to it, and my curiosity in the space just kind of takes over. So, it's funny because we see a lot of these guys that become disciples to a methodology religion, and it's like, no, man, this is the way, this is the thing, this is what you're supposed to do, and it's like you might want to stop that for a second, crack open, your the thing that you're sticking with, and listen to what other coaches are doing and explore it. And that's always the environment that we try to promote when we're working with groups, and of course, doing something like you guys are doing, it just it really helps the profession, I think.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, when you think about just the mere fact that over 50% of marriages in this country don't even survive, but we want to marry ourselves to exercises. 51%. But no, like people do, and it's. I think a lot of times we argue a lot about exercises.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. Like, you would kind of hope that in 2016 we were kind of past that, and we were starting to look more at like, well, how are you getting there, or what are your progressions, or how are you moving things forward or backward, or inside or outside? Like, what are you doing to actually take care of your kids? These student athletes or athletes, professional or youth, whatever they are that you're working with. But yeah, and I think that if the conversation doesn't kind of start, or at least somewhere in the middle, bring in like what your results are, like then what are we talking about, bro? Like if you're just gonna say like, I like doing these exercises because they do this. Mm-hmm. Well, like, okay, but what does that do for a person's vertical? 10, 40, 30, change direction, whatever.
How about this? How do those metrics actually correlate to on-field performance? If I've increased your vertical, does that, like we're talking about the NHL Combine, because it was recently here in Buffalo, and we're talking about vertical jump, and how does that translate into on-ice speed?
Right.
Does it, right? Like in a couple of one of my friends was like, well, I've got this algorithm that's got these 3 different variables, and I get on ice speed that way. And I'm like, okay, like, is it real or is it not real? And do these testing just for the test actually translate into some sort of performance metric?
Right. Well, and with things like that too, what's so crazy is skating is it's such a specific skill. That. If you haven't ever been on the ice, like accelerating on the rink is totally different than what you would do otherwise. So it's crazy, man, and I just think that a lot of us need to be able to evaluate more of what we're actually putting into what these kids are doing.
Yeah.
Now it's difficult, like. If we look at a team, like, let's say that you're a good team and not a very good conference, and you win a bunch of games every year and you go to the NCAA tournament, but versus a team that's in a really good conference who would beat that team, right? Like, are we saying that the team that's in a really good conference but isn't as successful in their league and maybe doesn't go to the tournament every year versus the team that is successful in their conference but lost to that other team, like are things that are going on there proving better results versus things that are going on with the team that beat them? Was
it that, or is it the recruiting that was better?
Right. I mean, and well, listen, I personally think that you can make kids better athletes. There's no doubt in my mind that you can make them faster, you can make them quicker, you can make them more agile. there are a bunch of different things that I think the future holds for this, and I don't know if it's necessarily big, in-depth, expensive tech stuff too. I think some of it, like, I think to slow the game down guys that do the stuff with the cards and all that stuff with vision training, I think that when we're looking at that kind of stuff, because I think vision training is like the next big thing when it comes to all sorts of athletics, because
well, when you talk vision training, are you just talking about like reaction timing with light boards, or are you talking about like wearing the the goggles that track your eye movement and stuff like that?
Well, even like, so slow the game down has things where it works on depth perception or just identifying colors and reacting off of specific things like that, because we want to talk about agility all the time, but the biggest thing with agility are your eyes. Being able to identify whatever the stimuli is, whether it's somebody coming at you that you need to dodge or you need to hit, or, back to hockey. Is it the boards? Is it the goal?
Yeah.
And picking up visually what you're seeing and changing direction. Now, I know that the people at Slow the Game Down have had really good success helping guys hit baseballs better, and, tennis athletes, male and female, and softball players. And I know Jeff does a bunch of their stuff, I think, with soccer, too. But I think that, like, starting, like we've talked about with weigh-ins, with your monitoring stuff, I think that starting simpler, and now he does have a ton of those toys, too.
Sure.
Once they get good at the other stuff, I think that, when you're able to do A, and the kind of lower level, if we want to call it, or less techy things that allow you to see significant improvements visually.
So for those who don't know, there's a lot of stuff that's going on with visual testing. You've got the Striver guys who are doing, complete virtual reality and looking at, here's what your, position on the field actually looks like. You got guys like Axon who are doing, they're flipping a screen up on the board and letting you react to that. You've got the light board. You've got Slow the Game. You've got Right Eye, which is actually tracking where you're looking in an athletic movement. So you might have a tennis movement, or you might have a pitch, and you're trying to train the person to look at an elbow to a wrist to the movement instead of actually following the ball. Like, you've got all these different things. You're exposed to a lot of this tech, obviously, with running the seminar and the group and stuff like that. With all of those, you go from a couple of K to $250,000 for a unit. Like, what have you seen that you think is going to get your best bang for buck where it is right now? Not where it's going to be 5 years from now, because 5 years from now everybody's going to be immersed in VR, but right now.
I think that right now, from what I've seen in literature I've read, especially when it comes to concussions, is that D2 board is supposed to be real. Now, I haven't had a chance to bring it in and have my guys do it. I know for a fact that the stuff that Jeff uses, that Slow the Game Down has, he's seen significant improvements with his kids with. The other things that I think that those reaction lights and the gates, I think that those are kind of the middle spot between both of them to allow you to get into some more game-related type of things. That ends up being a little difficult in the NCAA, because as soon as you get a ball involved, it's called practice.
Sure.
But, we're trying to, figure out more and more with that. But I think kind of piggybacking off of it, we like to jump at those things because toys are cool, right? Like, dude, there's nothing sexier right now than technology when it comes to, working with high-performance athletes.
Yeah, yeah.
But we don't ever talk about, how they cut. It's very rarely that we sit there and we teach these kids these techniques. And it's something that we've actually had a lot of success with, where kids, we would get more backdoor layups and keep people in front of us better the more we worked on this stuff. And the less we did, the worse we got. Specialized exercises like Doc Yestis talks about, where there's, some carryover into these things. And it's, again, it's not the sexy stuff. It's the stuff you do every day, but it helps.
Sure.
And even like return to play. We always want to talk about that, right? Like that's another buzzword. But how often in anyone's rehab protocol are we actually saying, let's review how you cut? We talk all day about your hop stop and your leg press versus right left with an ACL, but never like, all right, let's work on a two-step cut, a two-step 90-degree cut, and let's see how we do with it.
Well, I do see some groups like we've seen like at the Olympic Training Center, you'll have athletes doing like a drop jump, but a drop jump to an athletic movement, so that you're training not only for the eccentric, movement, but you're also looking for the athletic movement afterwards. So there are some places that are advanced and they're actually thinking about it that way. But I think you're right. I think that we run into this a lot where people assume that the technology will solve the issue of bad coaching or bad culture or whatever it is. If I spend more money at it, the problems are just going to go away. And it's like, well, no, that's not true at all. Like if you can't figure out what your coaching staff is going to do, the technology isn't there to augment it. It's there to replace, issues that you have. It's never going to happen.
Right.
So, we sell technology. It's what we do. But the technology isn't going to make you a better coach. You already have to be a good coach, and this is going to augment what you guys do. So when you're, it's kind of funny. You're like, well, we're going back to basics and teaching athletic movements. Isn't that what you're supposed to be doing in the first place?
I mean, yeah, and it's funny because a lot of the stuff that Doc talks about really kind of fits in that. Well, I mean, isn't that kind of what we're supposed to do? Like, that kind of makes a lot of sense, and people like prehab. Well, prehab, can we get them to move through the joint angles required at the velocity or forces required in the sporting activity using the muscles and the contractions? It's called dynamic correspondence. It's how you build specialized exercises. I think that we look at things and we try to pigeonhole stuff and maybe move a little bit out of our realm. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why that is, but it maybe some people might get a little bit PTE, where it might be, now if there's a problem and you can help it, help stabilize whatever these issues are, of course you should do it. And I'm not saying that you should never do, glute med activation for a kid. Now, whether it's activation or not, we can talk about later. But, glute med exercises for a kid who has some valgus in their landing. But have you ever tried to talk to the kid about how they're landing?
That becomes coaching cues and coaching technique, right?
Yeah. I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, if you talk to them and they're not doing it, it's one of three things, right? Your cues aren't working, and so they don't understand it. They're just not paying attention, or they don't care to listen. So you need to find something else to try to help them, or to motivate them, or to get them to do it, right? So if it's putting a band around their knees when they squat, or whatever it may be, then so be it. It's just, it's just doing what the game demands, I guess.
But back to the original point. The technology is sexy. The newest gadget that comes out, sensor that tells you when you've reached your VO2 max while you're doing your activity, sounds really cool. But how is your experience? I mean, you're exposed to a lot of different coaches who come to your seminar. Obviously, the tech is a big point of the conversation. The data is a big point of the conversation, and stuff like that. Like, how many of these guys are too focused on that and not going back to, what you're just talking about right now, and that's standing in front of a kid and showing him, why his, his landing is wrong because, it's, like you said, he's going a little valgus on it.
I think that we're lucky here that we don't have, I don't know, lucky might not be the right word, because it just is what it is. There's not a lot of people that are in attendance that, unless that's their primary job focus, that's what they're really doing. I think that there are some people that right now are collecting a ton of data. There are some that have way more of a luxurious situation than I do, in the fact that if I wasn't running the numbers or I wasn't the one, going through all the stuff that was popping up in our dashboards with you guys or putting it in Excel, it was Andrew, where they have exercise science departments that can do that for them, which must be nice, because when it's just two people, it's a lot of work. I do think, though, that it can be overwhelming, and I do think that no matter what, I think that everyone would agree with that there's a lot that can come from things. And I think the one thing that I've learned the most is that, like everybody says, communication obviously needs to be the driving factor, but even more than that, if it starts to impede upon anything else that you're trying to do, then things need to change.
Sure.
As we've kind of moved things in different ways and are implementing technologies in different settings than we were prior, there's been a dramatic change in a whole vast array of things, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah.
But it's crazy how that kind of stuff works, man. That it's just like there could be, some things that you see or and you're trying to do. But if the kid is like, no, I'm going to go do this, that, or the other thing instead, well, what are you going to do?
Well, it's a really good point. We had Coach Matt Whittlespaw. I don't remember if you remember Matt.
Mm-hmm.
He's now D1 coach up at Niagara, and he's the only guy on staff over there. And he's got 300-400 kids, and he was talking about getting like some of his guys who are like seen as team leaders and things like that to be the ones to buy in first, so everybody else kind of follows along. Like, how do you? I've had a bunch of offline conversations with you where you're like, I got this jerk and this kid and this one, and it's got to follow. Like, how do you deal with the room when it's like, look, man, like, we're trying to get this done because it's going to help you.
Well, I think he's 100% correct. There's some people that no matter what, they just don't want to do it. And I think that probably the higher level you get, you're going to get more and more people that are going to end up being like that. And it's almost... I've almost come to the point now where it's, hey man, I'm here. Like, when you're ready, I'm here. This is what you're gonna do until you're ready. But when you're ready, I'm here. So we can move forward at some point. But if it's just gonna be like that, then it's just gonna be like that. Like, I'm not gonna take it personal. Like, if that's how you're gonna be, that's how you're gonna be. And they think that they have the best answer for themselves. They may or may not be correct. But yeah, man, I mean, that's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles with some of these kids. And, the crazy thing is more often than not, when those people are removed or those situations are eliminated or at least altered in a bit, then the whole barometer of everything changes. So it's,
sure.
It's.
But that's not a decision you can make, right? Like, you're not going to be the person who's going to transfer a kid or cut a kid or take away his floor time, whatever it is. Like, you still got to deal with the issue in the gym.
Yeah.
So what has in your experience worked well to get kids to buy in?
Oh, giving them some autonomy with what they're doing, I think is really important. When you're allowing these kids to like make some selections, because we can talk about lifting and all these things all we want, right? I mean, it's general stuff, man. It's GPP. Who cares if the guy's doing a dumbbell bench versus a barbell bench versus a dumbbell incline? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, if the kid wants to bench and he's going to be more excited to come into bench instead of doing dumbbell incline, but you say, no, you can't do bench because you have to do dumbbell incline, like, you're kind of the asshole. I mean, like, seriously, like,
yeah.
Who cares? Like, if you have your things where you're like, listen, all right, man, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. After that, like, and the workout cards, legitimately, it's It'll say like horizontal push, and it'll be an empty square. It'll say horizontal pull and an empty square. Like shoulder raises and an empty square. Like some dude really loves to do half lateral raises, and that freaking gets him hype. Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, you want to do hammer curls instead of easy bar?
Yeah.
The things that we kind of pick fights about. I don't know if those are the things that we should pick fights about.
So you got a couple of hills that you're going to die on. Which things do you pick fights about?
The ones that Dr. Verkhoshansky said are the ones that are the most important are the squat and actually a seated calf raise. And Doc Yesis is big with his glute ham, which is a little different than how some other people do it. So it's all the way down, pause, and then up to 30 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And then, for the most part, as we get going, it will be the specialized stuff. So the pull back, the knee drive, and the lunges. And then depending on where the kid is in his career, following the jump progression, as Dr. Verkhoshansky has laid it out, is really important because it sets that base of elasticity and then teaches them how to jump and how to move better. So, those sort of things are really it. But with even that being said, obviously there are medical reasons why you're not going to back squat, or we'll change how we back squat or whatever. We'll have 6 or 8 guys double body weight squat for an 8. I don't know how much a basketball player needs to squat more than that. It's if we've got 6 of those guys that are ready, we should be doing some velocity based stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe those are the guys that we look at and we just watch how they cut. Are they better for somebody to be on a K box because they really need that overspeed eccentric, that overloaded eccentric, so they can just pop more,
Sure.
So it's kind of having your staples, but just because you're a potato guy doesn't mean you can't eat sweet potatoes.
Sure.
So it's those. But short story long, those 3, and the guys know. The guys 100% know, and when they ask, I tell them because these are the ones that the really smart people say are the most important.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay.
They have doctor in front of their name. It's really important.
Yeah, and their last name you can't spell it.
So that's in the gym, and what is your? Do you work with the on-court stuff, or is it just the gym stuff and pre and post?
I don't do not during practice. We'll do some stuff before. Some warming up stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But even with that, I think what's interesting with basketball is the whole pre-warm-up thing, that if people are really going to invest in it, I think it can be really great.
Yeah.
I think more often than not, it's just killing 10 minutes. I don't know. I think that it's kind of like that in a lot of places where it's like you kind of give them their blueprint, and there are some guys, I know we got one kid who every day, no matter what we do in the warm-up, as soon as we're done, he's going to do a figure 4 stretch on the scores table. I got another kid that no matter what, as soon as we're done, he's going to sit down and he's going to stretch his hamstrings on the bench. There are just, different strokes for different folks, man, and they're just going to do the same thing every day. So really, it's just how I handle that is, what do we need today?
Mm-hmm.
How do y'all feel? And when I see them before, if I do, it'll just be figuring out things and getting a pulse and going that way. Now the recuperative stuff, when we get into the season, we'll be doing things much differently.
Sure.
That's when we'll start getting into looking at readiness and the CNS and the ANS and prescribing things post-practice, night before a game. We can't specifically prescribe nutrition, I don't think, in the state of Virginia because I'm not a licensed dietitian. But we can talk to them about your CNS is down. It'd probably be a good day instead of eating this to have some avocado and some seafood, some salmon or whatever. and we're lucky if to have meetings the night before games so we can sit there and take care of these things. If you're parasympathetic, it's let's really bang in some extra protein. Get either the Normatec and crank it all the way up, or get you in a cold whirlpool or a game ready or whatever it may be, pull you back the other way, hopefully, help you recover a bit, help you get ready for tomorrow. If you're the other way, maybe we give you a Normatec and it's way, way down.
Yeah.
So it's just gentle or whatever, and pump you full of fluids, and just try to, because we look at all that stuff and we feed you with exercise or stress or whatever you want to call it, whatever's cool now, based on what you're able to handle. But we kind of run from these other things.
Yeah.
And Charlie Weingroff, I think, spoke about it up at BSMPG a few years back, where it was about when they were setting up everything that they're doing with Canada basketball, the original thing they were doing it for was their rehab and their regeneration stuff. And it's something that I've really spent like the last 2 years kind of looking into more and more and trying to, at least figure something out with it.
So outside of the gym, you mentioned CNS, ANS, looking at parasympathetic responses and things like that. Obviously, you're using an Omega Wave unit for recovery, or looking at recovery. You've been using that for quite a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a basketball coach. I've heard of this thing, the Omega Wave. I know it does heart rate variability and some other magic. What was your experience like from, when you started, how many years ago, first off, till now?
Gosh, 5 years ago?
Yeah, so you're like ninja black belt in Omega Wave now.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Maybe more like ninja black belt. No, maybe an Uber driver.
Uber driver? You're more like an Uber driver? We'll go with a yellow belt. So you're like you're a prissy yellow belt. What, start to finish, like, how did you first experience the technology? What did you gain in experience in it? And then finally, like, what did you leave with, where it's just like, I don't need 90% of this or 80% of this. I just need like 2 or 3 key variables that really make the difference.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest part, man, right there, is that it ends up being like, we look at like 2 or 3 things, then we look at other stuff like long term, like all the other evaluations. The functioning state of the autonomic nervous system and the functioning state of the central nervous system obviously are key. When we're looking more towards the off season and when we're training kids, we'll look at their resting heart rate, if we're doing it in the morning, and make sure it's sub 60, hopefully sub 55, because that'll just tell us what their general fitness level is. You'd be surprised how many of these kids show up. And it doesn't just happen with basketball players; it happens with all sorts of athletes. Mm-hmm. That resting heart rate, just a random spike in that's going to tell you a bunch of things that's going on with the kids. But I think that and I've said this before, the first thing I tell anybody when they first start using it is, you're going to do something about a month or 2 in, and you're going to see like that change. Whatever it is, right? They'll either go from like yellow this to green that, or red this to green that. And you're going to be like, man, this is easy. And you're going to do it again, and it's going to be dead wrong. Like, it ain't going to do what you think it's going to do. So pump your brakes, man. Like, pump your brakes. Hit up a lot of people that are involved in it. I know that Trisha's done a lot of great things with expanding her help.
Sure.
I know, like, Mark McLaughlin's going to schools and talking with people, and like, if you're calling me a black belt, like, he's like the Jedi Master over here. You've got Tim Rustbason, who's doing a lot of stuff to help the customers and figure things out and move things forward. But you need to pick your 1 or 2 things, and you need to follow them. And those are the 3 things that we really look at. And it is a lot, and it's getting into then what it's gotten me into then is reading more and researching more and understanding more of how the body wants to do things.
Sure.
How it just wants to survive, and it's really fascinating, and there's people that say that they have a pulse on their team and they can tell just by when they walk in how ready they are. And I'd say, maybe 9 times out of 10 you're right. But what if that one day is like the day that you should do it? And it's. I'm not using this as a sales pitch for them, even though I would, because I truly believe in everything that they stand for and they do. And I mean, dude, I found a cardiac condition with one of our kids.
Sure.
Like, now it ended up being a low-level AV1 block, but like, I mean, there's kids dying in training. Like, why would you not want to look at these things, to make sure that they're okay?
Yeah.
And the other thing that people need to understand, and I've said this a billion times too, is it might be expensive, dude, but it ain't a deity. Like, you spend a lot of money on these things. Even if you do something like, you spend a lot of time putting together a questionnaire that uploads directly into your Google Drive or whatever it may be. Like, that time is money, man. It's all expensive. And you have to remember that there are times where it may not be the best day for them to handle something, and you may have to pay it back later, but you got to know, when to let them go a little bit and how to feel the kids out, and then you've got to be able to know that the next day you're going to have to back stuff off, because you're not paying with your debit card, you're paying with a credit card.
Sure.
But it's fun, man, and it's if you've got any sort of sciencey, nerdy number geek like I do in you, then it's great for you.
So if you're obviously you're going to recommend an Omega Wave to just about anybody who's out there looking for technology. I can't afford an Omega Wave. What do you do? Like you said, you go back to those questionnaires and Google Forms and things like that. I mean, what type of correlations have you seen between the low budget way of doing things and the high budget way of doing things that you can actually maybe shortcut to one or two things that actually help without buying technology?
Can I steal an answer here?
Yeah, totally.
Well, it depends on what you're trying to do, right? I mean, like, I think that what do you want to find out? With your questionnaires, what I would probably suggest, if that's the route you want to go, is I would keep it to 3 at most. I would wait until you do anything until things are at least 10 to 12 numbers in.
Okay.
Because you need to know what an average is, like what the kid is.
Sure.
Excuse me. Because like we talked about, like, I'm a Debbie Downer, man. Like, I'm going to be like a 2. Tomorrow, soreness, I'm going to be a 1. I'm going to want a wheelchair after what I did to myself today.
Yeah.
When I feel good, because I'm old and dinged up, I'll probably be a 2. Maybe a great day, I'll be a 3.
Okay.
So like, but you're always happy, so maybe you're going to be like straight 5s. So it's not like that your 15 is like Kevin's the man, and my 6 is like Jay blows. It's just Jay's Eeyore, and Kevin's Winnie the Pooh, and it's like, oh, well, all of a sudden, Jay's 6 is now a 2 or a 3 or whatever. Now we got a problem.
Hey, you know what? This matches up pretty close. This type of information matches up pretty close to watching, central nervous system fatigue or whatever that might be.
The big one's sleep, right? When these kids don't sleep well, I think when you're looking at the questionnaires, then everything else falls in with that. If they say they're stressed and they slept well, then typically their ANS stuff isn't going to be too bad, because they're not really stressed. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
When they're really stressed and they're up and they're not sleeping and they actually do have whether it be school stuff or problem stuff or life, whatever it may be, a cold, the flu. That's the one that I think impacts things the most.
So do you ask sleep quality? Is that your question, or is it hours of sleep?
Sleep quality.
Sleep quality. Okay.
I think hours of sleep is hard because then you're asking them to spitball it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, I think that then you'll get the outlying number because they'll know it was. I think it's 6 of one or half dozen of the other because you're going to get the outlying number either way. And who's to say that? Well, I went to bed at midnight and I woke up at 7. But when they say went to bed, they were in bed watching, House of Cards for 2 hours.
Yeah, that's what my wife does. So, you've got what other things have you done? You got Omega Wave. Obviously, we talked about some of the gym stuff. What other parts of the athlete's day are you dealing with and touching in a way that, again, you have only so many hills that you're going to die on when you battle these guys, and what's absolute and what's not absolute. What other absolutes do you have in your programming?
I think that right now the way that we're moving more towards is starting to try to help these guys with what they're eating, and I think that it's more of just like general home ec type stuff that they should have been taught in high school, but no. And it's really so. For the longest time, I thought that all of these questions, for the most part, were just bullshit.
Yeah.
What do you mean you don't know that? Everybody knows that.
Everybody knows the back of the package actually has something on it, right?
Yeah. Eat your vegetables. Fried is not as good as grilled. It's not as good as baked. Everybody knows. They don't know this. I don't know. Maybe they're just getting better and better at playing dumb, or they don't know this. So what we're starting to, we're trying to find a cheesy way of getting that going. But that's kind of the next step for us, I think, is whether it be Andrew and or I, and trying to get the staff involved and being we're going to go to D Hall or we'll go to dinner one night, and it'll be what's on your plate? I'm not telling you to get rid of it. I just want to know what you're looking at. And what could you do differently that might help you play better?
It's not feeding them as much as it's educating them.
Yeah, I think that more and more with this generation, you need to empower them than just spoon feed them.
Okay.
Because as soon as you don't give them these things, if they don't know what they should do, now even if they know, it doesn't mean they're going to.
Yeah.
But if they don't know what they should do, then they're not going to change anything. They're just going to go and I got a guy no matter what. He's going to go to McDonald's. He's going to get hotcakes and sausage. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But maybe it's because he just doesn't know better. This is just what he likes to eat. All right, well, let's talk about that. What are you looking at? And what are we trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? What can we do that would be better for you? And all you can do is try. And if they're not buying it and they're going to do their own thing, then, again, you're there. They know you're there. They know you're trying to help them. If they don't want the help, they can come when they want the help.
So what resources have you pulled together to give these guys? Let's get right down to it. What works, to educate some kid who's never seen the back of a package before, who's never, eaten outside of a fast food restaurant. You're getting, because the one thing that I found that when we first started working with athletes was that you really don't need to be as educated to be an athlete. It was kind of a surprise to meet some of these guys who were, in the NFL, and then you talk to them and you're like, oh, that's right, you're very talented and you're not very, you're not as up on where you could be. I'm trying not to say stupid. But these guys, how do you break down lifelong patterns? They've been spending 18 years just getting by on talent and eating McDonald's because that's what was available to them, How do you break down and get it to a simple way that you can actually educate these guys?
To be honest, it's just sitting there and talking to them. And it's like, well, what are some things that we should look at? What are some things that we should be looking to add or subtract or change? Or, okay, so do you know what it means when they say French fries? Like, do you understand what's going on there? And then just talking to them about it. And I don't think that, like, as much as I try with the seminar, I'll never be great at social media. Never. Mm-hmm. Mostly because, like, in my own personal life, I don't really care much about it.
Tweeting and...
Yeah, I don't think that I do anything that's really all that cool that I need to put on the internet every day. I don't know. I mean, maybe other people would.
And here we are. Not. And here we are periscoping, by the way.
I know. How crazy is that, right? And both of us running a podcast. But anyway, but I think that it's just talking to people, because again, and Drew's right over here. He can attest to it. These kids ask all the time, like, what should I be eating? And it's the worst part about it is, dude, is it's not quite that simple. It's not what you should be eating specifically. It's what are some things that you can look at. I know people take teams to the grocery store and they look at labels and this and that. I just don't know if that's step one. Right now in college, we're lucky in a way that I don't believe any of our student athletes live off campus. Mm-hmm. So they always have access to the dining hall or whatever eatery on campus they select.
Sure.
What can we do with them to, if the only choice they have is to go to the International Building and it's either a turkey wrap or dumplings, what are you going to choose? Why are you going to choose it?
Yeah.
Is that the best choice?
Yeah.
What drives you to that choice? Have you even tried the other thing? And just that's all you can do, man.
Have you guys? Obviously, they changed NCAA regulations to allow for better meals for athletes and looking for the benefit of athlete wellness, student athlete wellness. What have you guys made changes? What have you guys done as far as changes go in your operations to deal with that?
Well, that's an ongoing process right now. We actually are lucky with men's basketball that we have I think it's a full kitchen actually in the locker room.
Sure.
So what we're doing right now is just trying to build like 2 or 3 almost like snacks through the day that they can come and get. But again, if they don't take them, then what do you do? So it's just about educating. It's about making better decisions and helping them. And on top of that, the meal stuff that we'll do the night before games, that'll be new.
Yep.
So baby steps, because I think the other thing too is when you make huge, dramatic, and gross changes, it freaks some people out.
Yeah.
Me especially. So I don't know if we would go any further right now, if that would be good for the guys, or if they would just look around and be like, what is going on? Like, I got to do what?
Isn't that part of what Altov was talking about with the changes that they made at Baylor? Like, it was a year over year, like we're only doing little, like boiling the frog slowly kind of thing, little changes year after year so that these guys who were never exposed to it will eventually get exposed to it, but the new class that comes in will have, no knowledge of the change that took place. It just happened over time.
Right. Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with what Andrew talked about with that. That and the whole idea of earning all of those situations with kids is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, no, I think it worked out really well. Dude, an hour flies by really fast.
No way, really?
Yeah. Yep.
You're really awesome at this, man. I get to 30 minutes and I'm like, oh no, what do I got to do now? I'm like, oh wait, but I only wanted to be 30 minutes.
It's funny because there's like so much more I want to talk about and ask. But so next week is CVAPS. Not to keep plugging it, but people should be aware of this thing. It's pretty awesome. We're actually going to do 2 podcasts. We're going to be interviewing with Mr. Carl Valley, who is my favorite, most honest person on the planet when it comes to knocking down walls and actually just asking the right questions. But I'm also going to do some 10-minute segments with coaches that are there and stuff like that. So we'll put them in. I think we're all like 2 podcasts out of the CVAP show. But I'm excited about it, man. Like, it's for one, it's the last show that I have to do for the year. So,
Awesome.
yeah, and then I'm going up, on vacation shortly afterwards. So,
Brilliant, man. That's great.
dude, it'll be so nice. But we're gonna get some stuff out of there and hopefully help continue to promote this. You also got a book coming out too. Is that?
All right, we'll make the announcement right here, man. Nobody knows about this. Yeah, that was going to be the secret for the seminar. So
then I won't say it. No. I'm not gonna say anything. Not gonna say anything.
Oh no, we can do it.
No, we'll talk about your secret memoirs and biography later on.
Oh no, not that book. The manual will be out July 15th. It's in print right now, and we're hoping to have it ready to go. So those people that are in attendance will be the only people until August that'll be able to get access to it. It'll be the first edition of Volume 1. And it really is kind of like a lot of the behind-the-scenes heroes that have helped put this together, talking about real-world stuff that is, straight up, this is what we do, this is what we did, and this is how we got better, or this is exactly what my studying was. I'm going to try to name all 10 right off. It's 10 chapters. It's Dr. Mike Gentry talking about coaching. It's Kevin talking about starting monitoring on a budget. Jeff Moyer talking about motor learning. Natalia Vrokoshansky gives a preseason program for basketball. Joseph Johnson talks about some things with injury reduction. Matt Tomey's talking about training the respiratory muscles. Daniel Raimondi talks about max aerobic speed and how he took Dan Baker's stuff and kind of tweaked it a little bit for what he does with his student athletes at George Washington University. Henk Kragenhoff is talking about identifying athletes and like fiber typing and things like that. And Brian Mann, VBT in season.
Nice.
And Benny talking about RSA, I believe it was. And I think that's all 10 off the top of my head.
I tell you, what I love about it is like you're really taking like the David Joyce approach, where it's like pick best people to give real experiences instead of just Jay standing on a mountain screaming off the top of his head what he thinks is best. Yeah,
I don't know if it's going to live up to Joyce's book, because that thing's killer. But
yeah, it's pretty badass.
It's neat, man, and it's opened my mind and my eyes to a whole other world. Just like the podcast has and the seminar has. It's fun stuff that keeps me busy, because if I'm not busy, I lose my mind. And people may say that happened before, but it's neat, and it's really exciting. And I just hope that it's things that people can take things from, and it could, above and beyond everything else, it can open more conversations. And that's just what we're trying to do, is whether it be with the seminar, with the people in attendance, or the people watching, on the online stream, or it's the podcast, or now the manual. As long as it's driving the profession and it's getting people to talk more and share more information openly and honestly about what they're doing, it's just going to make us all better.
Dude, you're doing the work, man. Honestly, like there aren't enough people out there who put together these lighthouse events. I can count maybe 5 that exist that are just like these anchors that really bring people together and share open ideas and stuff like that. And I think you've been doing a fantastic job at it. We need more of it, and unfortunately, like the amount of work I think it takes, it scares people away. But you're doing the grind out there to get it and make it happen. So I thank you, and I'm sure there's tons of people out there who thank you for doing it as well. So congrats, man. You've been doing a great job at it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And you guys have been a big part of it too, helping out. And of course, obviously, your involvement with the book
Yeah.
and your involvement not just with the seminar, but with the direction I've gone professionally and helping me be better. And it's mutual, homie. I appreciate everything y'all are doing.
So it's what we're all here for, right? If you're not helping each, I don't know another group of people that is better than coaches. Like, we could have built software for anybody, but this group of people is just incredible. Like, everybody is really there to help lift each other up, and you don't see a lot of jealousy out there. You don't see a lot of poking around. You just really see a lot of people trying to advance themselves, their professions, personal growth, and everything else like that. And I'm, just happy to be around guys like you. So good job, man.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. All right. Jay DeMayo, again, head strength coach from University of Richmond. We'll wrap on that. CVAPs, you want to CVAPs.com and all that other good stuff?
Yeah, CVASPS.com. I have a newsletter on there that I'm awful at sending out, but feel free to sign up for it.
Yeah.
At CVASPS on Twitter. We're on the Facebook thing too. And then the podcast we have too on iTunes. And yeah, man, if you can make it out to Richmond, Virginia, July 15th and 16th, we'd love to have you. The lineup, I think, is, kind of biased, but I think the lineup's pretty awesome, man. You got Bob Alejo hitting leadoff, and I think Randy Ballard's gonna hit right after him. And Randy Ballard's an athletic trainer at Illinois who is a superstar, and not enough people know about him. His resume and his work with high level athletes is absolutely fantastic. And when you post something that involves Randy Ballard on social media, and the first person that retweets it is Dan Paff, that just tells you something.
Yeah.
Having Derek Hansen on campus is never a bad thing. He's a rock star. He's coming in from Vancouver. Sam Code from Oklahoma. Mike Curtis is coming down the street from UVA. Talk about everything that they're doing over at Virginia, which is nothing short of stellar. Like I said, Henk Krishenhoff will be back. And if you've never met the Big Dutchman, he's the above and beyond being a genius. He's the nicest guy you'll ever meet. And Hank's helped me in ways like I could never pay him back for the amount of help he's given me professionally. He's a rock star, and
awesome.
He's a genius, and his talks are awesome. And he's going to actually talk about coaching. And people look at Hank, and it's like he kind of is like he gets like the misfits and the people that people can't work with or gave up on, and I don't know. Again, I don't know if I want to say he fixes them, but he fixes them. And it's and of course whenever you get Carl Valier in a room, it can be exciting. And he's rocking Regeneration Lab, the 2016 edition. If you haven't looked at the Regen Lab from back in the day, it's just here's the data, here's what it says, here's the studies, these are what people are doing, blah blah blah. It's just legitimate stuff, and you always are in for a treat when Buddy Morse stands up in front of you. And there's nobody out there that calls a spade like Buddy Morse does, and
yep.
He's a super guy. I've been lucky enough to see him talk a couple times, and he'd be an interesting guy to watch box because he doesn't hold a punch.
Nope. And don't invite him to Buffalo because he will.
Oh, he busts my chops about it all the time.
Me too, man. Are you from Buffalo? Or you have to come to Phoenix to see me. I'm not going up there.
Yeah, my wife's from there. There's no way. I told her never go. You want to go back? Go ahead. Never going back.
Yeah, he spent his time up here. He did his time in Buffalo.
Yeah, that he did. But yeah, man, it's exciting. It'll be a lot of fun, and it's and the crazy thing is the people that are in the room or walk around, and it's in that group, I want to say 4 of the 8 were in the room last year as guys in attendance, and we've already got the lineup for next year's set.
It's awesome.
Yeah, unfortunately, a bunch of those people won't be able to make it because they got something going on in Brazil. But it's it is, man. It's a lot of fun. We hang out if you can stay on campus. It's just again, I hate to keep name drop it, but just like Althoff said in his review of it, it's kind of like going back to college. We're going to eat in the calf. We're staying in the dorm. And,
Yeah, I'm packing an extra pillow. That's
yeah,
that's the lesson I learned from last year.
yeah, and it. Well, we got barbecue the first night, and then my boy Mike Moe, who does all our catering for basketball, he's bringing the grill out, and it's going to be hots and hamburgers and chicken. Straight out there. We've got a couple of local craft beers each night, and it's and if for people who aren't as adventurous, just some more regular stuff. But yeah, man, it is. It's just about coming out and opening up, and even if you don't even want to open up, just open up your ears.
Yep.
Because you could be sitting at a table with guys who have coached people who've won gold medalists, people who've won national championships or been to Final Fours or conference championships or you name it. I mean, World Series championships.
Yeah.
Just to be able to sit down, and if you want to hear awesome stories, you need to ask Bob Alejo about his connections with rock and roll music.
We'll do that. Awesome. I'm looking forward to it, man. This is going to be a great time.
It is, dude. I'm excited. I can't believe it's already here.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. Look forward to next week. Thanks, man.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
All right. See ya.
See ya.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Coach Me Plus Applied Sports Science podcast. I hope we made your ride, your run, your bike, or your drive a little bit easier. If you're new to the podcast, we do this about once every 2 weeks and hope to get coaches on that, take things out of the lab and bring it into the gym. If you're listening to us on an app, you might want to subscribe by either clicking the link in iTunes or Stitcher or whatever app you might be using. You can follow us on Twitter at CoachMePlus, and of course you can subscribe to our newsletter. It's the Applied Sports Science newsletter. Go to CoachMePlus.com, click on the link in the top right corner, and subscribe. And I promise you that you won't get hit with spam. It's actually good stuff. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you guys again in 2 weeks.